to the stage right now.
Yeah.
He's got a cute little dog. He's also very funny. Please make it loud for Iwan Oong.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, sir.
What do you call a guy who can make a business suit real fast? Taylor Swift. And it's weird how language changes over time, right? Like nowadays, if a guy came up to me and told me he was going to blow my brains out, I wouldn't know whether to run away or pull my pants down. Yeah, my name's Iwan Oong. It's kind of a weird name, you know, but I was born and raised here. Yeah, I'm a U.S. Army veteran.
Nice.
Oh, thanks. It's pretty cool being in the Army, you know. It was kind of weird being the only Asian person, though. Yeah, every day, people just looking at me like, are we supposed to shoot this guy? Yeah, like, remember that thing going around on the internet about a year ago, like if you're a woman and you're alone in the woods, would you rather run into a bear or a strange man? And a lot of ladies chose the bear, right? But I think that's just ignorance of bear knowledge. Because I ran into a bear alone in the woods once. And it fucked the shit out of me. You know, last year scientists reported for the first time 2 male humpback whales having sex. Yeah, Warner Brothers are already gonna make a movie about them. Yeah, they're gonna call the movie Humpback Mountain. Yeah, most people don't know this about me, but like, I lost like 250 pounds last year. I got divorced. And you know, whenever I'm having sex, like, I never last as long as I'd like to, right? I'm always like, come on, penis, hang in there. And so it's like, yeah, screw this. Blech. Yeah, I've had sex with all different types of women. You know, white, black, Asian, Hispanic. You know, in my opinion, Asian women give the best blowjobs. Yeah. If any of you ladies like to prove me wrong, you can meet me in the bathroom after I'm done with my set. Hey, you know, the national dog of Korea is called a Chindoke, right? It looks kind of like a Siberian Husky, but it's like a golden blonde color. And it tastes like ham. I did my 23andMe last year. But, yeah, the results were kind of confusing, you know? Yeah, they just sent me back a pair of chopsticks. You know what we call a person who's mixed black and Asian? We call them Blasian. Right? And someone who's mixed Mexican and Asian, well, we can either call them Mexicans or Asians. You know what we call a guy who's mixed white and Asian? Asshole. You know, Shaquille O'Neal's like the happiest man on earth, right? He's like, oh, he's so jolly, like everyone just loves him. I think he's like so happy because he's never been bullied before. Yeah, how you gonna punk some guy who's so tall that his crotch is in your face, you know? It's like, hey Shaquille, give me your fucking lunch money. Never mind. Yeah, I threw out my back a couple months ago. It's really bad, you know, so much pain I could barely walk and shit. But then my neighbor, she's a masseuse, she massaged my back and all the pain just like, totally went away. Yeah, that's great. I'm actually gonna go back to her after this, but this time for a pulled groin. I was talking to this guy the other day, he told me he's Persian. I was like, wait a minute, you're Persian? From Persia? And he was like, yeah, well, where are you from? I was like, the Han Dynasty, I guess? One of my buddies told me that if you scratch your head a lot, that's what makes you go bald, you know? But I don't know about that, because my balls are still hairy as hell. You know, Koreans, like, we celebrate Thanksgiving like everyone else, right? Like a big meal with our family. But we do it slightly differently, like we do with like our dead relatives, right? Like what we'll do is we'll set a place for them, you know, and we'll have the picture there, right? And then throughout the meal, we'll like take a bite of food from the plate, you know, put it in this bowl and stuff. And like liquor too, right? Like shot liquor in front of the picture. And then we'll like get it, it's like swish it around, like pour it, you know, we have the picture there. And for us, it's like my grandparents and my aunt, right, that passed away. And it kind of symbolizes like they're there with us eating and drinking, you know? And we'll get their favorite food too, right? Like my grandmother, she always liked a certain type of fish. It's like this red snapper. So we always have that in front of her picture. And then my aunt, she liked this pork belly, right? It's like these thick slabs of smoked bacon, right? We have that in front of her picture. Now my grandfather, what we'll do is we'll get a picture of my grandmother and we'll put it under his like this, like, you know? Because for him, his favorite thing to eat was my grandmother's pussy. And just, yeah, I grew up Christian, you know? It's kind of weird how Christianity, or being Christian, or, I mean, the word Christian is kind of like a verb now, right? Because I am Christian, but I'm not Christian. And if anything, it's more like, I'm Christian. And why should you bring a basket of apples to math class? Because God wants us to be fruitful and multiply. I think I know how Jesus got 12 guys to follow him, you know? He was like, hey, you want to give up everything in your life and follow me? And they're like, no. I can turn water into wine. Let's go. Yeah, I learned in the Bible that you should love your neighbor like you love yourself. So I went next door and jerked him off.
That's great.
You know, it's hard being a good Christian when the person in front of you is driving like a stupid asshole, right? Like if somebody cuts in front of you and it starts going really slow, it's like, oh my gosh, right? It's like the work of the devil and shit, you know? You have like, Satan, get behind me. You know, because it's all like, all that charity and goodwill just goes right out the window when the guy in front of you driving like a stupid asshole, right? Along with my middle finger. Yeah, you know, if you don't know how to use chopsticks, you know, you should probably learn, right? Because like us Asian people, when we see you fumbling around with your chopsticks, we lose all respect for you, you know? And we're like, so you don't know how to eat? Let's just be friends then. Yeah, one time, I don't know how to start this one. Okay, you know, my brother's wife, she calls him oppa, right? Which means older brother in Korean. I'm like, gross, you know, what the hell's that all about, right? Yeah, when I was married, my ex, she just called me stepdad. You know, when you go to a Korean person's house, you gotta take your shoes off, right? It's not tradition or anything. You just wanna make sure you're not stealing their chopsticks. And they say the elephant never forgets. And that's true. Until it's their turn to take out the fucking trash. And, you know, they say California is now #1 in road rage in the whole country. And finally all my hard work's paying off. Yeah, you guys ever play doctor when you were little kids? Yeah, when I was like in kindergarten, I was playing doctor with one of my classmates. It was all fun until she started playing proctologist. Yeah, you've seen these billboards all over town about this blind mountain climber, right, that climbed to the top of Mount Everest. It's really inspiring, you know? But then I was thinking, well, how did he know he's on top of Mount Everest, right? For all he knows, he could have been on top of Mount Whitney, just like right over there. And then I was like, you know what, that's actually a pretty good business idea. Yeah, getting paid to take blind mountain climbers up to the top of Mount Everest. You know, a lot of important things were invented in China, right? Like paper, the compass, gunpowder. One thing definitely not invented in China, though, driving. Hey, you know, Gary Coleman, whatever. He's kind of famous for being a short guy, right?
Yep.
Hey, he's only like 4'8" when he died. And he died kind of young, and he's only 42 years old. So, I mean, by all accounts, what can I say? Gary Coleman lived a short life. Hey, you know, we don't have the metric system in America, right? And I think I know why. Because in America, everything, you know, Americans need things to be short and sweet, right? Like inch, foot, yard, not millimeter, centimeter, kilometer. It's like, shut up, you damn nerd. Yeah, you know, when you're taking a piss and you have a hard on, it's really difficult, right? I mean, if you're outside, it doesn't really matter. But when you're sitting there aiming at a target as small as a toilet, it's like playing skee-ball with your dick. You ever seen a picture of Bigfoot where he's like this, right? Most people don't know, but that's actually taken from like a 5-minute film of Bigfoot like walking through the woods and shit. And I was watching this documentary, and I think that Bigfoot's real, because in this documentary, they showed that Bigfoot is a female. Yeah, you can clearly see that she has boobs, you know, and they're like swinging around as she's walking. And so like, they're actually, you know, for not having a bra or anything, they're actually pretty well formed and shit. I was like, damn, Bigfoot's got some nice tits. Yeah, what is this, like Sasquatch gone wild? That's crazy, you know, I'm watching this documentary alone on Saturday night, and I'm like, this is freaking insane, you know, I never thought in a million years that I'd be jerking off to Bigfoot. Yeah, I was over at Mount Baldy this past weekend. I learned it wasn't always called Mount Baldy. Back when the mountain was a lot younger and more hopeful, it was known as Mount Rogaine. There's a story. You know, I used to go to Raging Waters like every summer, right, when I was a kid. But then one summer I stopped because I had a fairly traumatic experience. And when I was like 16, I went there, and I was waiting in line right on these stairs. And I look over, and the girl next to me, her boobs are like right in my face, right? And it's kind of cold, you know, windy, so her nipples are starting to pop out, right? So I was like, oh, okay. So I turn, but then this girl here, now her face is like right in my junk, you know? And I already got like a partial woody, right? Because the nipple girl over here, you know? But then this girl here, she yawns, you know? So I was like, oh my God. I was like, that was it, right? It's like, I had a full woody. Then I almost poked her in the eye and shit. So I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get out of here, you know? So I just run up the stairs to get on the slide and get down. And apparently it's pretty common occurrence because the lifeguard was like, come on, just go, you know? So I jumped on that slide, I got out of there, and I was like, man, I really need to rename this place. It's called Raging Boners. And I was talking to this one guy. Oh no, you know, normally whenever a guy like brags about how big his dick is, it's usually the opposite, right? It's usually really small. I was talking to this guy the other day, he's like, oh yeah, man, my dick's so big, I'm hung like a horse. I was like, like a seahorse. All right, there's a sailor, right? And he gets hired aboard the ship, and then they're out at sea for a bit, right? And then he goes to his buddy, he's like, hey man, when do we go back to port? You know, I'm getting kind of horny out here. And he's like, oh no, we're not going to go back to port for like another 6 months. And he's like, what? You know, I can't wait that long. And the guy's like, well, have you tried the barrel? And he's like, no, what's that? So he shows him to this room, and there's a barrel there, right, with a hole in it. And he's like, well, there you go. And so he starts fucking the barrel, and it works really well, right? So later he's talking to his buddy, he's like, oh yeah, man, that barrel's freaking awesome. He's like, oh, I'm gonna use it every day. He's like, well, every day but Sunday, right? Like, oh, you can't use it on Sunday? He's like, well, you can, but Sunday's your day in the barrel, so. All right, I'll tell you a story. The day I left for the Army, right? Now, my mom, she came home from work early that day, right? And she'd never done this before. And so we went to lunch and shit, like Denny's, you know, down the street. And I remember I was just like so fucking nervous, I couldn't eat anything. And so we go back home, you know, get all my shit together, and we're just waiting, right? We're waiting for a couple hours. And so after a while, I'm starting to think, you know, what if he doesn't show up, right, the recruiter? But then the minute he said he was gonna be there, right when it clicks, right, I hear these footsteps, you know, like outside, right, like walking up the stairs. And I could tell it's him because he's moving really slow, like much slower than a normal person would. And then I can hear him like walking, you know, down the hall, right in front of the door, right, then he knocks like, all slow, right? So I open the door and it's him. Now I've seen him about 5 times before this, but I've never seen him in his full uniform and shit, right? He's like all these medals and shit. So I was like, oh my God, like this guy's like a fucking war hero, you know? So I grabbed my stuff and I turned to my mom, right? Now Korean people, we're not the most, you know, affectionate people in the world, right? So like, she just looks at me and is like, bye son, you know? So I'm like, oh, okay. So I turn and I go with my recruiter, we go down the hall, we go down the stairs, we get into his car, we back up, and just as we're about to pull out, my mom comes flying down the motherfucking stairs, right? And tears just streaming down her face and shit. And she goes, just fucking jumps onto the back of the car and shit, you know? And she's like, I love you, son, you know, don't die, you know, come home and shit, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, no problem, you know, mom, and I give her a great big hug and shit. And then we drive off, you know, and I look back, and she's standing by the side of the road just bawling, you know, like, You know, I was like, oh man, that's crazy, you know? So about an hour later, I call her, right, because I'm all worried and shit. And she's all partying with all her friends. All right, you know, I was watching this doc. The more I learned about space, the more I wish I didn't know anything about fucking space, right? I was watching this documentary about Jupiter, and if anything happens to Jupiter, we're fucking screwed, right? Yeah, they were saying that sooner or later, Jupiter will move closer to the sun. And when that happens, it's just going to either shoot us out into space, or we'll collide with another planet, or we'll be thrown into the fucking sun, right? So I'm watching this, I'm like, how does this help my life at all, right? It doesn't. Like, I can't affect the path of Jupiter, you know? All this is doing is stressing me out a little more shit. Just another white hair on my ass. Yeah, and now that I told you guys this, now you have to worry about it too, right? This, what, the health of your prostate, your colon. Oh, don't forget Uranus. Yeah, you know, in the 60s, Dallas was like this ultra-modern city and shit. Yeah, when JFK was there, it totally blew his mind. What is the smartest dinosaur? The thesaurus. Okay, here's the last Jesus joke. You know, a lot of black Christians will tell you that Jesus is black. Well, we just don't know, you know. What we do know is that Mary was like a Palestinian Jew. So whatever Jesus was, he was half what Mary was and half what God came down as, right? So he could have been half black. He could have been half white. Hell, he could have been half Asian. But I think we all agree that Jesus wasn't half Asian, because he never had any money. My name's Iwan, and I'm out here. Thank you.
Keep it on for Iwan.